which I want to share with you. The challenge is a lot of stuff has been said. My original plan was to say something different, but now I have several challenges. One, how can I keep you interested and not get you bored, but still tell you what I wanted to say? And then have you reflect with me on what the outcome to how we use the insights from our culture, from our intellectual tradition, from our practice tradition to enrich a management training process or thinking about management. So here is the question I will ask, and I hope in the discourse we will come to some kind of an agreement. Can we develop a management system that will make in the next 20 years 20 to 50 world leading companies? Can we use all the insights, all the great ideas that we've heard, can we somehow put it together, all right? And make and help train our young generation, the next generation, to get this, get a leadership role. Get a leadership role not in terms of money, but get a leadership role in terms of sheer intellectual conviction. Right? I will try and tinker with these ideas in the course of the 20 minutes that I have. But let me make two disclaimers, and let me tell you what I will not do. One disclaimer is that be aware that management thinking is designed for large organizations. We are most management thinking is about large organizations. That's a bias. Be mindful of that. So when we think about our own tradition, when we think about how to make that into a management philosophy, we need to be mindful not to only cater to the 3%, but also cater to the large number of people, including my previous, the man on the street who puts an extra potato on the scale. Just to tell you that, look, I made a mistake, but I'm going to ensure that you don't suffer from it. Right? So, disclaimer one. Disclaimer two, that most management theories, we think we legitimize that knowledge by having one methodology or thinking that there is one truth in the world. So we do sampling, we do statistical methods, it's easy to publish, and we think all the other methods have no role. I think that's a disclaimer. Be mindful not to take away that thinking. All methods are as good as the other. It's just that sometimes reviewers, and I being a reviewer myself, and I'm an editor myself, and I know how difficult it is in an editorial board to argue in favor of a qualitative paper. Why? Because of two simple mistakes that the researchers make. Right? One, construct validity. They do not understand constructs. When you say there is a reference discipline, I'm going to borrow from that reference discipline. You take Indian, take the whatever, Varna system or whatever that is. You need to construct your arguments in a theoretical, consistent way that it is construct. There is a validity in the construct, not context validity. In papers, we look for construct validity, while context is very important. That's the second disclaimer. Okay? Now, I want to share with you some of the yardsticks of my life, and at every level, I came to a wow moment or a yaha moment. Okay, so there are several yardsticks, and at every yardstick in my life, I came to a learning, and I will share that with you in the context of our own cultural heritage or intellectual heritage. The first was the role of the context. I, being Western educated, got a job on a very, very fancy consulting company, and the first job I got was to sell Kellogg's in this country. It was around 92, 93. And we got $250 million for 2 years. That was our budget. And we had to get Kellogg's from 0.5% to as high as possible, right? And we did everything in our head, in our capacity. We had all the money. We did everything that we could. I was leader of that group. We did everything possible. And this is a Harvard Business Case Review, by the way. Okay. We did everything that was possible. Everything in my knowledge I did. After 2 years, 1.5 years, the board of directors of Kellogg's were going to come. And my boss told me, Mr. Rai, it's your day of reckoning. You have spent $250 million and the share of Kellogg's in India is only 1%. So you're going to be fired now. I said, okay, I'm willing to take that day of reckoning. So all the top brasses from the US came down, and when I'm stuck, I do this. I put all my team in a bus and I go for an aimless drive. So I did that. I went on a Punjab highway. I just went for hours and the bus broke down next to a dhaba. And we got down. We were all very fancy dressed and everything. And we got down and we were just contemplating that, okay, now we're going to get fired. Okay, we go back to Delhi and we're going to get fired the next day. So I went to the pan wala. Next to every dhaba there is a small pan wala. At least in those days there used to be. I don't know whether they still have these pan walas. And then the pan wala asked me, why are you so tense? Why are you so upset? You look so tense. And then I said, you know what? This is the situation. I said, I'm going to get fired tomorrow. I have not been successful in my task. I've spent $250 million and the share of this product is not gone up. So he laughed at me. He says, आप लोग fancy street में आते हो, fancy salary है. आप लोग को दिमाग simple. You use simplicity in your head. I said, क्या? Tell me something that I already don't know of. He says, साहब आपको कभी मालूम है जो हम लोग हिंदुस्तानी गरम breakfast कभी नहीं खाते हैं? Sorry, we don't eat cold breakfast, not hot breakfast. We eat hot breakfast, but we don't have cold breakfast. Now that was the insight for me. That was the insight. How could I not have got this very simple, so simple that you don't need Harvard degrees to catch this, right? It's so simple. That day was my day of reckoning for my whole life. Context is king. Forget concepts. If you don't understand concepts, your research will always be poor. And in our case, when we develop our Indian management philosophy, thinking, how do we enrich it? Context is everything. That is the first realization of my life. And then I ask myself a question, then what is context? How does one understand context? What are the components of context? Is context merely a feeling? Is context merely just because I live in a country? That's my context. What is my context? How do I, as a scientist, understand context, the nuts and bolts of context? Right? And that's my second insight. Right? Then I kept on. After a year, I was working for the same company, and then I had another project, and I was going to make the same mistake, and I was in a farm not very far from here, in a place called Hampi. You know, there is a big, there's a lot of temples and things like that. So I had gone there for just a break, and I was thinking about this, and I was in Hampi, and then I went to the town next to Hampi, where there is this place. I like idlis and I like dosas very much, so I was sitting down. I just enjoy that very much. So the one very, very nice gentleman, in those days you had 100cc TVSs. I don't know, they still exist, not long ago. TVS 100 or 50cc, I think. In those days you had the gearless 50cc. So one gentleman came with this TVS 50, and he parked his thing, and he says, very curious, what are you doing here? I said, look, I'm come to see Hampi. And then we started talking, and then he gave me the second life lessons of how do you understand context. And he said, context is not a thought. It is an experience that you understand and you remember for your life. So context is not a thought. It's an experience. Then again, I went into another pain spill. What is experience? How do I know what is experience? How can I? Now I understand context, but it's not a thought. Okay, it's a double negative. Fine. How can I define white by saying black is not white? That is not science, right? But what is experience then? That gave me my journey continued. That gave me my third insight. This time I was in Xinjiang. I was working with the farmers there, and I was trying to explain to them, it was a European project, I was trying to explain modern tools. Very early on in China, they had very old tools. They were pretty poor. They were poorer than India. At least the farmers were poorer than India, and they don't have land ownership. They have community land ownership with very different dynamics. So I was there, and this very nice Chinese gentleman, he had no understanding of Chinese, so he didn't understand English, he didn't speak. I had an interpreter. So this is the interpreter's English version of Chinese that I used as an insight. So I cannot guarantee that it is exactly what the Chinese farmer said, but this is what I heard from the interpreter, which gave me the aha moment. Aha moment was what? So I was struggling with the idea of experience. What is experience? Right? As a scientist, I want to know what experience is. How, when I talk about experience, what do I mean? Right? So that man said that experience is not data, even though we think we use data as representative of experience. Then subsequent thought made me understand, when I started meditating myself about 10, 11 years ago, I do that 40 days every day, once a year. I realized that experience people use in academia as data. And I tested this many times among my students. I said, what did you experience from 9 in the morning when you come to my class? They said, oh, I saw 3 buses. I picked up a coffee. I saw black dresses everywhere. I saw rain. I saw 5 shops. So they look at experience as data points. I experienced it, I thought that perhaps it's more than data points. Experience is all encompassing understanding of the event in which the first person is embedded. At that point, then I went and read Carl Polanyi's book, Contextual Embeddedness. And his central argument was that society is superior to economics. Economic thinking is embedded in society. So when I talk about context, or when I talk about experience, the first person, the experiencer, okay, he is experiencing all of it, including data points, his feelings, his senses, all of it. It's not just a data, an idea that you see 5 buses and you see 6 cycles and you see 5 minutes. Okay, so then that is what experience to me was, right? And then I said, now I understand the foundations. And then I heard all of us talking in the morning, and I asked myself, what's going on here? Okay, what is really going on? What are we talking about? I realized that we are talking about the mechanics of management. We're addressing courses, we're addressing how this and how that and why this and why that. It is the mechanics. And we get caught up in the mechanics of management. Okay? And we help support the same big organizations. Whereas in our own systems of thinking, how many big organizations thousands of years ago that we can relate to? Perhaps none. So why don't we think of a system that actually develops a way of managing the smaller, the bigger than smaller, bigger than smaller. So that way we develop a system of reasoning, not as mechanics of management. Mechanics of management comes from economics, which is optimization, which is arbitrage adjustments. That's fine. That is very good for all those business schools that make tons of money educating millions of people. No problem with that. But if our challenge is how do we bring in Indian intellectual discourse into a management ethos that will develop the next 20 world-leading management environments, then I think we may need to step up and think a little, reflect something. And my 2 or 3 insights are this. To do that, one, we need to look at what in the morning or in the afternoon session, we talked a lot about the logics, the research methods that are inherent in this culture. We need to give it precedence. We need to bring it into the mainstream dialogue. And we need to be brave. I encourage you to use that and write papers. There are academic people like myself, and I know lots of people at the editorial boards that would appreciate this. So use these logical traditions, use these mechanisms, and write papers. Be brave. Don't replicate. Do search. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is try and not get into this dialogue of West and us. Doesn't make any difference. We get caught. It's a rational dilemma. I am different from you, so what? Big deal. What's the point? I make a difference from you, so what happens next? You can't do anything else with that. You can't create a new system with just talking about differences. Get out of this difference. Oh, the West did this to us. Oh, the West is here, West is that. Doesn't make sense. If we are to build something new, then we need to build something new from our own strengths, not from the fragments of unsuccessful past or what A did to B. Doesn't help. We need to develop our own conviction. So, Navinaya systems or the Nyaya systems of reasoning are very important. If you're academic researchers, be bold, write, use these systems. That's how we start building the reference discipline. That's how we start building small steps. We start creating legitimacy. And don't worry about A method or B method. Use the construct validity that is in the Navinaya system or the Nyaya system. There is sufficient construct validity there. Second, third, and the simplest, okay? Remember to reflect. Thinking gets you nowhere. Thinking will only get you to a decision tree. And I have had that myself. Every time I thought, I came to a decision point, right or left. But reflection gets you to insight. And with that, this culture is full of insights. It's got so much to teach us. Let's begin that journey of reflection. That's all I have to say.